welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about something very fascinating that I think all of you will want to pay attention to. As we ask the question, which room of three rooms do you reside in? After all, it seems all of us at one time or another are residing in one room known as the past room, where we tend to regret past hurts, painful memories, grudges, or other memories which impact us and how we make decisions in this particular moment. Or perhaps you're the kind of person who hangs out in the future room, where you might feel worry, anxiety, fear, and things like that haunt you daily to where you don't take any action at all. On the program today, our guest is going to be showing us how we can live in that third room, which is known as the present room, where you can intentionally manifest from that specific place. We'll learn how to activate the power of the question, where am I? And I'd like to welcome our guest today, who's a former Wall Street managing director, high school and collegiate wrestling champion, as well as community activist, speaker, coach, and author of the book, The Three Rooms. Over his successful 33-year career at Citigroup, our guest was responsible for the sales and marketing and trading of several different businesses within the firm. So when you talk about anxiety and fear, that's certainly a place somebody will experience most of those things. So the question is how to be successful. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Kevin Murphy. Kevin, thank you for being on the program today.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Now, I really enjoyed what I have read in your book, The Three Rooms, because it made me think about, for instance, where am I generally speaking when I happen to be engaged with someone, or I might go out and do a public speaking event and wonder where the source of my power actually comes from. Which of these three rooms? You really broke it down and kept it simple. Let's talk about how you came to create this book. What was going on in your life where you were inspired to do this?
Well, like I said, as you mentioned, I spent 33 years with one firm on Wall Street, and I really wasn't anticipating writing a book, but I had gone through some personal experiences as well as many different mergers, throughout my corporate career. And whenever you go through any kind of adversity, you always start to look within for answers, and that's what I was doing a lot. And one day, I just kept getting this premonition that I was going to write a book, but I didn't know what it was going to be about. And then the concept of three doors came to me, with a past, present, and future. And I was kind of convinced that was what I was supposed to write. And eventually, I kept describing the place beyond the doors where our thoughts go. And so the three doors turned into the three rooms.
Now, like I was saying earlier, this is such a simple way to go about people who want to pursue, let's say, self-improvement, and how not to make it so complicated, because sometimes you see that quite a bit out there. There's all these steps, how you write down goals, and by the time you're done with a lot of these things that are being suggested, it seems like that's more work than where you were in the first place. So let's talk about how all this works and how people can consider what the three rooms are.
Very good. Well, the whole premise is that our experience of life is not based on what we do for a living or what we have, our possessions. It's really based on what we think. And our thoughts can only be in one of three places. They can be in the past, or the past room. They can be in the future, or the future room. Or they can be in the present, or the present room. And whichever room your thoughts are in determines your experience of life in that moment. Because, of course, thoughts can go back and forth from room to room. So the key is to be aware of where your thoughts are. And it is that awareness or that consciousness that separates your awareness from your thoughts, so you're no longer at the effect of your thoughts. And so the simple answering of the question, where am I, what room are my thoughts in, separates that awareness from your thoughts. And that's really where we want to be. We want to connect to that awareness, to that consciousness, or that that universal intelligence that we're all connected to.
Now, you talk about something real powerful there, and I remember when I was reading that section of the book about, observing your thoughts. Where are your thoughts coming from? And this is really powerful, I think, for a lot of people to come to understand. And that is, I remember I spent a good period of time studying things, for instance, such as subliminal persuasion and propaganda, going all the way back to when all of this actually started with one Edward Bernays. And I began realizing, and I remember even being in college and I was studying broadcasting, and there was this particular news program they talked about advertising and how advertisers really work at getting you to be persuaded into buying their product or their service. And at the time I remember saying to the instructor, well, I don't believe that my actions toward buying particular things are actually guided by these people. I really feel that I have the freedom to make my own decisions. That's what I thought. And over the years, especially as I began to study about these things such as subliminal persuasion, advertising, messages, things like that, and propaganda, I started thinking, okay, well, how am I actually making decisions and why do I make those choices? For instance, you might want to consider, like a lot of people, a new car, and you think about, for instance, the message that you hear during every election cycle. For those people that want to have savings in their bank account, get those bills paid down, get a good education, and get a home. And you realize that message is there, and that if you're not living up to that, then it creates a certain feeling of anxiety, like, why am I not measuring up? And so then you begin making decisions you normally shouldn't be making, especially whatever your present, let's say financial state is. And I started thinking, wow, this is pretty powerful stuff. And just becoming aware of that might be happening to you changes everything.
Well, I agree. I think we make a lot of decisions and we do a lot of things subconsciously. We're not aware of them. And even today, you look around and there's so much information on how to live a minded lifestyle. And we hear things about mindfulness and living in the present and being in the now. And it all centers around the conscious awareness of our thoughts. So I think more and more people are understanding that it is so important to be aware of what we're thinking and be aware of what we're feeling, but we just don't do a very good job at it. And I think the purpose of the 3 rooms, or one of the benefits, is to make it more simple. And it is about how you feel. People say, we have so many thoughts, and being conscious of all the thoughts and everything we do is pretty hard. If we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, trying to keep track of all of them is a real daunting task. But to just say, how do I feel in any moment? And if you're thinking about something, well, let's just say if you're feeling certain emotions like, anger or resentment or guilt, you're typically thinking about something in the past that isn't making you feel good right now. And you're reliving those negative emotions. Or if you're feeling stress or you're feeling anxiety about something, you may say, oh, I'm fine, or I'm not thinking about this, or I'm not thinking about that. But if you're feeling stress or anxiety, then you are thinking about something in the future and thinking about, what you don't have, or maybe kind of a worst case scenario. So how you feel is your indicator of which room you're in. And if you're feeling positive, if you're feeling gratitude, if you're feeling appreciation and joy, you're in the present room. So you can still be thinking about something. If you're recalling positive past experiences, that's fine. I don't even consider that being stuck in the past room. I consider that being right here in the present, feeling good, remembering something that brings joy to you right now, and that's a good thing. And it's the same as imagining a positive thing in the future. I mean, those are the things we want to be doing right now, as opposed to feeling the negative emotions that can be associated with our thoughts.
Now, I know you talked about this too as well, kind of in a different way, but it was the same thing, at least in my experience, when it came to, as you were talking about, observing thoughts. And people say, well, how do you get in that habit? And one of the suggestions that I like to make, and it's certainly the same, is that, let's take a look at a situation you might find yourself in, whether work is a great place, because a lot of times when people go to work, they don't feel that excited about it on Monday morning. Proof of the pudding of that, of course, is they say more people actually have or die of heart attacks on Monday morning in anticipation of going to work than they do any other time of the week. Strange. And then we've got hump day, and of course, thank God it's Friday. But the fact is at work is where we also find ourselves around people pretty regularly that we normally wouldn't be around, for long periods of time. And so you will find yourself in situations where there might be arguments or tension, whatever the case is. Whenever your boss walks around, you feel that tension maybe in your stomach. And there's the opportunity that I would think people would have to begin observing, why am I thinking this or feeling this way? What's that conversation that's going on right now that might cause me to open my mouth, for instance, and say things that I know that there's a possibility I might regret? So reaction is a good place to start with helping people to understand this is how you can start observing your thoughts and questioning where do they come from. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think you make a great point, because we tend to change how we feel based on where we are. And if we go out into, watch a sunset or into nature and we feel all wonderful, but like you said, we go into work and, and we feel terrible. And it all depends on whether we let what we see and hear in the physical world determine how we feel inside, or whether we let how we feel inside determine what we see and hear. And whether it's on the weekend and you're enjoying things outside, or you're enjoying nature, or you're really happy and peaceful, and then, as you said, you're that Monday morning and that anticipation of going back to work and bumping into a boss or worrying about that deadline you have, or that coworker that just keeps annoying you and saying negative things about you, and you have to see that person again, and it keeps bringing up those negative emotions. That's the biggest challenge that we all have. And so it's each morning. It doesn't matter if it's a Sunday morning when you're going to go to the beach, or if it's a Monday morning if you're going to go to work. It is connecting with your own higher self, with your own soul, just being able to start to observe, as we talk about, your thoughts, your emotions, how you feel. And that can be done through different things, and we can talk about them. Just something of just appreciation, just being grateful for something, just appreciating something over and over again. And then when you have to go into the situation, something we're at work, you can observe the work without and observe being there without interpreting everything you see as being negative. You can say, I feel good about myself. I'm going to keep working hard. I know, other people may not feel the same way, but I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to focus on how I feel. So when you do get pulled away, and you still, you start to feel those negative emotions, you can pick it up right away. Because it's not like you're never going to be angry at something or never going to feel stress. It's just picking it up much quicker to be able to come back into that present moment.
And I agree with you. And more importantly is when emotions like that do occur, again, that's that opportunity, as we were suggesting earlier, that you pay attention to your thoughts. I'll give you a great scenario of what I mean by that. There was a time when I was living up in the Northwest, and I was taking the MAX system, which is basically, the tram, and I had my dog with me. And just as I was approaching to go get on, there was a lady talking to the driver standing outside of the MAX, and was asking the question about, is it okay for dogs to be allowed on the MAX? Okay, and I caught that, and slowly, I began to have a series of thoughts that I wasn't aware of. This is down in the subconscious mind, which is pretty powerful when it comes to the actual actions we take, and to show how in this situation I was not in control. And I think I actually went into the past room as I began to initiate what happened after this. So I began to question her, and I said, well, if you have a problem with dogs, I'll go ahead and I'll go to another car. And she says, well, I was just asking her a question. And then I continued, yeah, but you're asking a question in relation to my dog. So now you can see how the ball's really starting to stew and roll. It got to a point, seriously, my thoughts, and this is subconscious, because I thought I was actually in the moment consciously expressing how I feel, but it was really my subconscious that was on fire now. And this turned into basically a verbal confrontation, all initiated on my part, literally. And and I could just feel the rage inside of me, and I just walked away, and I wanted to make sure she felt bad about this whole situation, right? And I sat there as I got on another car, and I just sat there, and I could just feel it all just boiling in me, you know, and I'm like sitting there with my wife, and she's looking at me like, and I was like, where in the hell did that all come from? And I realized when I went back into my past that there were situations that I found where people were making decisions about what would happen to me that I had no control over. That's how far back this stuff went. And I remember sitting there going, wow, and realizing how much I wanted to go up and ask that lady for forgiveness, you know, for what I had just done. And just sitting there, and it just took a few minutes to process this. I felt better, but I also felt bad for how I made someone else feel, you see. And that's those train wreck thoughts running amok and throwing you in one of your rooms. The past room, I'm pretty sure, was the one I was in, and how I took all those actions and turned this into something worse than it needed to be.
Yeah, I think you made a great point about the subconscious and subconsciously holding on to things from the past, and then literally bringing them into the future, and having them kind of manifest. But what's interesting, I had a very similar situation. I mean, on the Long Island Railroad train, because I used to commute back and forth to New York City, and for the last couple of years, while I was writing the book, I just kept any thoughts and ideas that I had, I would just write them down, and I was filling them into chapters in the book. And literally one day I was sitting on the train and was talking about just this kind of idea and this concept of the act of observation and not letting what we see and hear affect how we feel. And the train came to a dead stop. And now it was actually in the morning, and it was going in. And now it sat there for about 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden people started getting anxious, and then people started talking, what's going on? Why aren't they making an announcement? And you can just feel the murmur, and you can feel the stress and the anxiety, now is chatter and everything. And I literally wrote, in the book, I said, this is, you have to observe the situations you're in and not let them affect your emotions, because right now I'm sitting on a jam-packed train. And people are really starting to feel stress and anxiety. And, if you can feel at peace in this situation, then you'll be able to feel at peace in any situation. And that's really, look at it as, as little tests, and almost as a game. Because, like I said, it's easy to be real peaceful when you're outside in nature. It's not so much when you're stuck in those situations, and that's when we really want to just start to observe it and take those emotions out of the picture.
And that's so true too, Kevin, because as you can find yourself exercising, hey, pay attention to your thoughts. What's that conversation, as you talk about in the book, going on in your head? As you can do that, you can realize there are certain words you're using that let you know which room you're in. Why don't we go ahead and explore that for a minute and give people an idea when you hear your thoughts, when you're paying attention to them, there is a certain worded language that should be able to let you know which room you're in when you're feeling that sense of tension or anxiety.
Well, mostly it's how we describe ourselves. Our awareness of being is the great I am. I am what? I mean, how do you describe yourself? And typically in the past and in the future room, we use the word not. I am not good enough. I am not going to be able to do this, because we're taking feedback from what other people have given us. Oh, you're never going to be able to do that. Oh, you're not going. Daniel, you can't do that. That's way beyond you. Oh, you'll never be able to afford that. Or you're not going to get that job. And then you start to buy into that, and you start to use the words, I'm not going to be able to do that, and that leads immediately to negative emotions. It leads to doubt. And when you have a desire or a goal, and you start to say, I am not going to be able to do this, I am not, you immediately create that doubt, and you prevent yourself from being able to achieve that which you're trying to achieve and that which you desire. And yet when you remove the not, and I am going to be able to do that, or even just I am happy, or I am healthy, or I am wealthy. You think about these kind of things. And I even like to take it one step further. If you really want to empower yourself for the future, instead of saying, I am not, replace the word not with the word already. I already am happy. I already am healthy. I already am, on my way to a great job. Because when you say I already am, you're coming from the place of already having achieved it. You're feeling what it's like to have already achieved it. And so it immediately eliminates the stress of I'm not going to be able to do that, with the empowerment and the joy of feeling I've already done it. And you need to do that before it's manifested, before it comes, and that's the quickest way to get to it.
You reminded me, too, of a guest we've had on the program a few years back, and we're all familiar with affirmations, the idea of repeating a particular phrase, moving us toward a desire or an experience we'd like to have in our lives, as you were just talking about. He changed up the game a little bit and called them afformations, and where you state a specific desire or object that you would like to have in your life experience in a way that you ask a question. And as he presented this, I thought, there's kind of some genius in that. For instance, when you were talking about, let's say you would like to have a better home. I am living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 3,000 square foot home of my dreams, for instance. And he was suggesting, well, there's a little snag in that, because your subconscious mind, as we've talked about earlier, is very powerful, and it will state that right now it'll argue and say, no, you're not, because you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment at this particular moment. What, are you out of your mind? There's your present room conversation right there. And he says, instead, how did I get lucky enough to live in a 3,000 square foot home of my dreams? And he says, think of the magical power of the mind itself. It loves to solve problems. And in fact, I remember a quote somewhere where I read, if you don't give your mind a problem to solve, then it will find one for you. And there are plenty of people out there feeling miserable as all these things happen to them, and, and these are actually problems of mine, saying, well, you couldn't find anything, so I thought I'd find something for you, and it may not be something that you like. But I thought that, the kind of genius behind the question of something like that. Have you had that experience?
Well, I think it's a really important point that you can't picture something that you don't truly believe can happen. Like, I can't say that, I am playing, basketball for the New York Knicks. I am playing basketball. I'm just, I have a 3 or 6 inch vertical leap. I know that in my mind I can't do that. So no matter how many times I use something, a positive affirmation, or I already am playing for the New York Knicks, there's something inside of me that knows it can't happen. And that's why we have to, our desires and our dreams, our goals, we have to pick things that we know are achievable. If I say I want to, make $1 million in the next 6 months, but right now I'm $100,000 in debt, I just know that's unrealistic. But if I can say that I'd like to be on my way out of debt and being financially stable in 6 months, I am that. That's a little bit easier. And so, but it's still coming from the feeling of, like, what would it feel like if I was debt free? If you're in a lot of debt, what would that feel like? Wouldn't that would be great? And I want to hold on to that feeling, and by holding on to that feeling, that positive thought of I am or I already am, with that emotion of the feeling that you are already out of debt. That's the powerful combination that attracts into your life that ability to be debt-free, and whatever those circumstances are. And now you don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but the script for the movie of your life is already written, and you're waiting for it to happen. You're looking for those opportunities because you're feeling as if it's already happened, and you know it can happen. and you're just waiting for those opportunities, and sure enough, then you bump into somebody that's, there's a great opportunity, and you say, this is perfect, I'm on my way, I knew it was going to happen, and this is how it feels, and then you feel that positive thing twice, and that's what I call twice felt. One, you feel the joy of it happening in your imagination before it's happened, and then when it does manifest, you get to feel it again.
Now, I like that you talk about a movie theater in your book. Let's get some clarity on what you had described there about that.
Well, I think it's, it really, and I think it's probably the most important concept in the book, because you can think, well, theoretically, well, yes, our thoughts and our emotions, they have a big impact on our life. Yes, I know that, I've heard that. But in order to say that our thoughts can really impact or affect or determine our experience of life, what is our experience of life? It's this life that we're in, and whether we all want to admit it or not, we are all actors in the movie of our own life. And someday there'll be a biography. If someone made a biography of us, it'll show your life, and at this point, wherever you are in your life, that's where you are right now, and what's going to happen in the rest of your life. So when you start to observe your life, like, and let's just say that movie of your life, why wait till the end of your life to look back and see what happened? Let's start observing it right now. And when you do that, you can start to see what happens, and what is projecting on the screen right now in the movie of your life is what you are thinking and is what you're feeling. Because you're going back to earlier what we're saying, like if you're holding on to something in the past, some kind of, subconsciously, something that caused anger or, resentment or about something or guilt, as other things keep coming up in your life, you're going to keep lashing out and in ways and showing anger that you're holding on to. Or if you're constantly feeling stressed about things over and over, everything that keeps coming in, you're going to feel more and more of that stress. And you don't realize it because you're not observing the movie of your life. You're actually stuck in it. But when you can separate and you can be aware of what's going on and you can understand that you want to be imagining where you want to be be feeling those positive things and expressing gratitude for being able to achieve desires that have yet to manifest, that's how we do create our future. And that is how we can really enjoy the present moment. So it is watching the movie. Don't wait to the end of your life to look back on the movie of your life. You're in it right now. Observe it and understand your thoughts and emotions are what you are projecting out. That is what other people are getting from you, and that is what you are attracting back into your life.
Now, I thought that was a really wonderfully powerful idea that you shared in the book about the movie theater. And here's what I was actually rolling over in my mind as I was reading about this. And that is, consider yourself to be a movie projector, okay? And you've got a screen in front of you, which is the life, the outside reality you have as an experience. And you'll begin to see that as this movie outside of you plays out, that it's coming from you, the projector, and that it actually is life the way you believe internally you're experiencing it. And we all, at one time or another, many of us have heard, your inner world is your outer reality. And when you can really embrace what you've written here in your book, The Three Rooms, and you take a look at this idea of the movie theater and that you're the projector, it really is pretty astonishing when you finally get that aha moment. It could come several times before you really go, wow, that you really truly are the creator of your reality. And some people might argue that, especially people who feel victims a lot of times about how life happens to them. But the fact is, things don't always work out the way you thought they would. Things don't always work out the way you would like them to. But the bottom line is, let's remove that expectation you may have had about something and realize things just work out. What do you think about something like that?
Well, I think your analogy of the movie theater is just spot on. it is what we project from within, and thinking of ourselves as the projector, and what we think and feel is what we project out. And you're explaining the concept of as within, so without, and so it's right on the money. And we don't have to be at the effect of everything we see and hear. We can be the ones that are affecting everything we see and hear based on what we're projecting out. And when you look at certain people that just things always happen, those happy, they're incessantly happy people, and they're always we call them lucky. Oh, they're so lucky. I have a close friend who just, everyone says, oh, she's so lucky, I can't believe it. And then when you talk to her, she's always grateful for everything, and she expects good things to always happen.
There you go.
And that's what she projects out. And she deals with a lot of adversity, 6 different kids and all kinds of things, and there's stuff going on nonstop in her life. Yet things always seem to happen because she's grateful for every little thing, and she expects everything to work out.
I was just last night talking to my wife about something that I found to be an enjoyable phenomenon, and this was something I read years ago, and I thought I'm going to go ahead and put this into practice because a lot of times when people pursue personal development, they want to change their lives, one of the first things they really want to change is their financial situation. And I can say this unequivocally right now that if you want to change your financial situation, change the way you think and feel about money and finances. That's the first step you have to take, But this particular exercise I found rather amusing because of what began to happen over time that was pretty phenomenal. And this is totally true. So it was suggested as you're going about your day, if you happen to see a penny, we've heard, see a penny, pick it up all day long, we'll have good luck. So you extend this a little bit, and so what it was suggested was when you see a penny, you pick it up and just simply kind of maybe look up to the sky or whatever, and you just say, thank you. That's it, and put it in your pocket. And anytime you happen to go along, all of a sudden, you'll find a penny. Pretty soon it starts turning into a nickel. Then pretty soon there was dimes. Then pretty soon there were quarters. Then pretty soon there were dollar bills. Then pretty soon there were 5s and 10s and 20s. I haven't found a $100 bill laying around anywhere yet. But what was fascinating is how I was finding this money just laying in the middle of nowhere. In stores, whatever the case is, just, there was one time I walked in and I looked across as I was sitting in a deli department. What is that over there? Walked over there, nobody's around, and there were 2 $20 bills just laying on the floor, And it was just really amazing how that simple, but it was true. It seemed to build. And each time I'd pick it up like, thank you, and it was like, it made me realize we have a lot more abundance around us than we think we do.
We really do. And there's no greater emotion that we can express to bring more abundance into our life than gratitude. And you said there's 2 words, and then it all started with the penny. And when I've heard people say, well, how do you, get out of the future room, when there's just so much, stress and anxiety in today, it's, with all of the chronic illness, we know one of the major causes is stress. People say, well, how do you break that cycle? And it is a cycle, and most people don't even realize it because they go to bed constantly thinking about things the next day and worrying about things. And so the first thing in the morning, they start worrying about those same things, and then they worry about it all day long, and then they go to sleep at night, and after days and weeks and years, you just so get stuck in that. And if you want to start to break the cycle, very similar to what you were just saying, I've done a practice for the longest time, and it really helps, and it especially can help for the people who say, well, I'm usually pretty good during the day, but at night I really struggle at night. I don't sleep really well. I'm thinking about things the next day. So I think of 2 words, starting like 5 minutes before, like my head hits the pillow, and I just constantly say 2 words over and over. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And you don't even have to start to think about things that you're grateful for, but you will automatically start to think of it. Even it can just be the pillow. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. And you just go to bed, and it's kind of, you can make it as a game. It's almost like a joke. Just say, okay, I got to say thank you, thank you. And when you start to wake up in the morning, after a very short period of time, the first 2 words you start saying, like, when I wake up in the morning, the first 2 words of my mind go, thank you, thank you. I'm going to the bathroom in the morning, thank you, thank you. I'm just, those 2 words just keep, and you're ending your day with gratitude, and you're starting your day with gratitude, and it's just because you've done this stupid little habit of saying those same two words that you said when you pick up the penny, and it does change how you end the day, it does change how you sleep at night, and it does change how you start the next day.
No doubt about that. It's like a great personal development guru, Jim Rohn, said, never, ever begin your day until you finish it on paper. And that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit too here, is you end your day this way and it automatically begins your next day the same way. Fascinating stuff. I'd like to kind of end the show here on something that I think is also powerful, since we're in the realm of gratitude. And I think listeners, as they listen to this at first, they'll go, well, okay, I know that, I get that, but I think it's a little bit deeper, especially as you write about it in your book, The Three Rooms, and that's forgiveness. Now, in your book, you're right, and I've even heard this other places, so we won't totally attribute it to you, but that forgiveness is a selfish act. So let's talk about what forgiveness is and the power of it and how it works here in The Three Rooms.
Basically, it's when you're really stuck in the past room, and when you just can't let something go because it is your perception of what someone has done to you. And sometimes it can be, it's almost irrelevant whether it's, quote, real or whether it's not real. I mean, to you, if it's your perception that it's happened, it's real to you, but we have to understand it's still our perception. And the easiest way or the best way or the fastest way to get out of the past room and back into the present room is forgiveness. If we're holding on, and every time we think about someone, it brings on those negative emotions. Unfortunately, too many of us, we have degrees of forgiveness, and we hear it all the time. Well, I'm a forgiving person, but this time they crossed the line. And what does that mean? What line? And whose line? And everyone has a different line for forgiveness. And so letting that person go and forgiving them is freeing you from the negative emotions that you're feeling. Because think about it, a lot of times, let's just say, when we go back to someone at work, and from the beginning of the conversation, when we go to work and we see somebody and, maybe they said something about us or we heard that they said something about us, and every time we see that person, we're so upset and we're so angry. And then we see them smiling. And, when you're mad at someone and you see them smiling, it makes you madder, right? You're like, oh, what is he so happy about? And it makes you crazy. And so you're holding on to that anger or that grudge, and it constantly affects you. And so being selfish means when you let that go, and you just say, you know what, every time I think, I keep feeling anger. I want to look at this a different way. This is not worth it. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to forgive him. I'm going to move on. And now you're not feeling those negative emotions. And one of the most important things is it doesn't mean then that you have to start to do lunch every day with the person. You just let them go.
I want you to have my children. No, literally take them.
Yeah. But when you go to work the next day, it's just that you've let it go, and you just go, oh, I'm so glad I'm over that, and I'm going to look at this a different way, and it really can help. And it's just a very quick story is a good friend of mine who read the book. He said, Kevin, my brother and I had a big falling out 10 years ago. We used to be partners in business. And he's moved down to Florida, and I haven't talked to him in 10 years. But after I read about the past room and after I read about forgiveness, and I kind of understood that, it's been bothering me for so long because we were so close. And now it's just such a negative thing. It's my brother. I think about him a lot. He said, I called him up when I was down in Florida, and we went and we had dinner. And we never brought up the business and all the problems and everything that led to our falling out. He said, but we just talked about other things. And he said, now going forward, he said, I feel so much better about it. And he goes, well, the relationship will always be different. It will never be like it was, but we're starting over. And we're starting from a new place. And he goes, and it's really wonderful. And I feel a lot better about it. And that's what it's about. It's not, it's about freeing us and making us feel better. And instead of, it doesn't let them off the hook. It lets us off the hook.
And that's so wise, too, because that's something that I think a lot of us don't tend to do is to be forgiving of ourselves. And so why I thought that was an important thing to bring up here toward the end is it's easy in a situation, and I mean this from an observation experience point about forgiveness, when you feel you've been wronged by someone else. That's easy to observe and see. There it is. It's outside of you. I forgive you because this happened between us. But here's the hard part, and as you were talking about, forgiveness is mostly found in the past room. Let's say that you're out there and you're pursuing, I don't know, let's just say skiing or something like that, okay? And you're really trying your hardest, and pretty soon you feel that you're on top of the world and you're on your game. And yet you get into a competition. A perfect example of this was the movie I, Tonya, which was the movie about Tonya Harding, and where she was out skating all these what seemed to be mediocre people, but yet she was getting the low scores, feeling like she was being jilted. And how often we can feel, how come we know we seem to be more talented in a particular arena, it could be anything, and yet when we see mediocrity seemingly being rewarded for mediocrity, we kind of get a little upset about that, And I think that's the point also that needs to be aware of is, when are you going to forgive yourself for, A, thinking that way and being grateful that at least they're being rewarded? You see, there's really a catchy thing right there, isn't there?
There really is, and I think you actually bring up two important points. One is that we just can't control how other people think or feel, and so in that kind of situation, you truly believe that you're doing something, you're deserving of something, you're not getting it, and it could be on the ice skating rink. It could just be that new promotion at work, and you're busting your butt and you're doing all the right things, and then this person comes in and they seem to, in your mind, they're brown-nosing the boss, and then they get the promotion. Now you got to report to them. And you're like, this is not fair, right? This is just not fair.
I know you probably experienced that with Citigroup over the many years you were there, right?
Oh, you see it through a lot of
you
different,
had forgiveness dripping off of your skin.
Yeah, but I think the one other really important thing that's very related when you said about forgiving yourself, it is that subconscious guilt that we carry around. It is that thing in the past that we said, or that thing in the past that we did, and we know it was wrong, we wish we didn't do it, or we wish we didn't say it, and we carry it with us, and if I only did this, and things would be different, and we can't let that go. Because other people can make us feel guilty, but we can be brutal on ourselves. And so that subconscious guilt that we're carrying around, if we can learn to forgive that is one of the most liberating things that we can do. That will bring us back into the present room faster than anything else, because once we can truly forgive ourselves for everything that we have ever done in this physical lifetime, then we can truly forgive other people as well. And until we can truly forgive ourselves, we're not going to be truly able to forgive others.
And the wonderful thing to sum it all up, too, is the personal power certainly resides in the present room, doesn't it?
It certainly does, because that is our connection to our source. That is our connection to that consciousness, or that divine consciousness that we all share.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for being on the program today to share this wonderful work that I think people will actually take in. And I love the simplicity. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes too many people write books and there's a bunch of fillers and you're thinking, oh, my goodness. But this has a lot of simplicity. Just with the title alone, 3 rooms, you think, okay, well, I can manage that. Well, there's still work to be done. There's no doubt about that. But one thing they can do is, where can they find you? Do you have a website, places where they might be able to find your work, take a look at the book, things like that?
Sure. It's just the3rooms.com. And it's also on Facebook or Twitter. Actually, Twitter's just Kevin Murphy 3R. But the book's available on Amazon. But there's lots of information on the website. So feel free to check it out.
Well, very good, Kevin. I was grateful that we had this opportunity to talk about the 3 rooms. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Very good. We want to thank you, the listeners out there as well, for joining us here on the program. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.